Good evening, everybody. It is my pleasure to start this session of Dialogic today. We have with us Dr. Banatanwi Das Mahapatra, our eminent faculty member. She is going to talk on an aspect of art. Now, may I request Dr. Ajay Kumar Sharma to please introduce our guest speaker today, and then after that, I would request Shudev to carry on. Kaushik, Ajay.
Thank you, ma'am. So, good afternoon, everybody. It's a great honor for me to introduce our today's speaker, who is going to talk to us about the impetus to imagination, design as a threshold of recreation. Today's speaker is Dr. Banatanwi Das Mahapatra. She is an associate professor at the Department of Design, Kalabhavan Visva-Bharati. Banatanwi earned her PhD in Exact Humanities from IIT Hyderabad and MFA from the Kalabhavan Visva-Bharati. She taught at IIT Allahabad and was a visiting scholar at College of Fine Art, Carnegie Mellon University, USA. She was a research associate at Outreach program at NID Ahmedabad, project designer at National Center for Youth Diversification, Kolkata. Except teaching, her professional career includes various exhibitions, seminar, workshop, projects, etc. over last 15 years. Banatanwi tries to recreate a space in imaginary horizon, which is synonymous to theory and practice. Some of her important engagement in the distinguished exhibition, seminar, workshop, seminars are Fiber Art and Painting, a solo exhibition in Kolkata; Bridge to World, a group show at Menier Art Gallery, UK; New Craft, a group exhibition, Tsinghua University, Beijing, China; New Craft, organized by the Faculty of Fine Art, Dhaka University and the Tsinghua University of China; the 16th International Conference on Music, Perception and Cognition, jointly organized with the 11th Triennial Conference of ESCOM, Sheffield, UK; International Symposium on Speech and Music, AIIS, Mysore; 19th International Conference of Aesthetic, Krakow, Poland; 38th Indian Social Science Congress in the context of People, Art and Knowledge Systems, Andhra University, Visakhapatnam, organized by Center for Exact Humanities, IIT Hyderabad, Lalit Kala Academy, New Delhi, and Indira Gandhi Rashtriya Manav Sangrahalaya, Bhopal; Soul of Asia, Asian Network, a symposium of KEPCO Art Center Gallery, organized by Korean Local Industrial Cultural Association and Korea Craft Institute; Sound Thought 2016 Dialogue, Sound and Music Across the Art, Glasgow University, UK. And presently, ma'am is engaged in the Kalabhavan as an associate professor. So now I would like to invite our today's speaker, Dr. Banatanwi Das Mahapatra. Ma'am, please, now floor is yours.
Thank you, Ajayda. Thank you all the members of this organizing committee and others. A very good evening to all of you. So today I'll try to bring the notion of action and how action is related to in design, and try to understand the creator and the form of different arts, and how design plays an important role in the process of making. So I'm sharing the screen. So let us begin with this understanding of reality, that how do we look at reality in a broad perspective. So the reality, what appears to us is discrete, it's contiguous. There are many things exist in the reality, and the creator at the same time as a spectator and the knower, in Indian tradition as we know it as Karta, Bhokta and Gyata at the same time. How does the creator recreates this reality with the help of designing in the process? So reality is described here in many ways, in many sense, as existential or actual or the factual reality, experiential reality, how we experience the reality, and the imaginary reality. So now there is a transition from this imaginary reality, and also it's a question that whether there can be any reality without imagination. So from imagination to existence, from mind to the body, how does this transition or the transformation happen? And how does the creator recreates this reality? So creator requires a space to begin with. So now this impetus we are calling as a force. So there has to be a force which gives us or creates a space for us to recreate this reality. And from this impetus, we get a space for imagination and then action. So if we draw a thread in between impetus, imagination, and action, then in this entire process, the point of design gets created, which later on creates a body of art. So recreation in Indian tradition is also known as anukriti and also anukathan and anusandhan, is like for searching for something, and also it's like a recreation of our internal talk. I mean, without having the physical body of any sound, as we talk within ourselves, how do we recreate that in different forms? So in this entire process, in the act of imagination, there is a removal from reality, and act of in recreation, there is a removal from memory. So in memory, there are a lot of things at the same time a creator can recall. But in the process of recreation, there are things get removed and also add on at the same time. So there are memory removals and the reality, I mean, removals from reality. So basically, design is working in a space where it gives design, as I'm calling it, as a designation. It's like it affirms the presence, I mean, the existence of a being, whether that is a living being or the non-living being in the world. The design affirms the existence of that being. So formation, transformation, and information, all these things happen to get a form ultimately. So when we, I mean, all these things are happening in mind, but when we say a work of art, then action requires. So art gives many meaning to the world, and it also has different meanings, like as to join or the manner or mode, as just something complete, suitable, etc. So from art to work of art, there is an inspiration. So which that inspiration is born out of the space of the spirit, which gives a space for our breathing, like inhaling and exhaling. So in the visual space, there is a breathing space. In the space of imagination, there is a breathing space. In the space of recreation, there is a breathing space. So this now breathing requires a control. So when breathing requires a control, that requires a kind of a skill, which is again born out of habit. So which requires a continuous and a constant practice. So now coming to imagination to action and to re-embodiment of what is being imagined, there is a process of thinking. So thinking as a craft of mind. So we require thinking as a, craft of thinking and craft of seeing, craft of listening, craft of making, craft of saying, etc. So when we say that craft of seeing, that doesn't mean that just only seeing, that we see a lot many things at the same time. So, but we do not receive everything, or everything doesn't get registered when we see. So it's basically the craft of seeing or craft of listening, or whatever is, whatever craft is required in the process of recreation. That is something that requires a kind of an unity or a bondage or a strength, which is like which gets registered in the mind, so that it's not fragile. So as India is actually a land of many stories, so let me begin with a story of the origin of musical instruments from Natya Shastra. So there is a story of how all these ancient instruments, musical instruments, got created. There was a sage called, his name was Swati, and in the interval of his study, the sage went to fetch water from a lake. So when he went to fetch water from lake, then Indra sent torrential rain, and so he got stuck there in the lake, and he kept hearing different kinds of different sounds falling on different objects in the lake. So and those sounds were actually creating different spaces in his imagination and different volumes. So that he started imagining different kinds of body with different types of sounds. So then the sage came back to his hermitage, and he recreated those sounds in the form of mridangam and other instruments, other musical instruments. So why I'm beginning with sound? Because our body and mind both are actually extremely attached to sound, and it's a kind of a voluminous space where we are very much attached to. And so those sounds of different kinds of sounds which he heard and then recreated, had given a different body to all of the sounds. So that was his impetus, that was the force. So that force gave him a kind of a space where he could afford to recreate those sounds. So and again, I'm coming to different these visual occurrences, and here I would like to sort of bring Steiner's notion of spirit. So Rudolf Steiner, in his article, The Nature and Origin of Arts, he created two different personas in this article, and those personas actually the spirit, and the spirit of the physicality, physical reality, the actual reality where we are living, and the reality beyond this physicality. So he created two personas, two female figures, or rather female images. So one is actually sort of experiencing and relishing the sunset, the scenic view of nature after sunset, and thinking about this worldliness and the very much physical, the mass and flesh of this reality, and sort of experiencing that and appreciating that. The other persona is actually brings this reality, transform this reality in the another world, which doesn't have this physical body. So at the same time, Steiner tries to create two different personas in this reality, in the world we are living, where he could draw the two different personas, one in the physical world, another in the world beyond physicality. So here we see a beautiful copulation between the two, the physicality and the reality beyond physicality. So where we see that the imagination, where we see this imagination in one way gets a space for transformation from physicality, and other way the transformation from the other world. The creating sort of from the memory or experiences of different types of occurrences. So design plays a big role in between. So, and also it gives different meaning to this world. So, so that's how we come from mind to matter. So conceiving, let us now understand what is this form and how do we perceive this world. So there plays a big role of our sensations, and how these five elements and the five senses and the five sense organs, they are attached to each other. So everywhere in the experiential world or the imaginary world or the world of recreation, everywhere there are two types of bodies. One is like gross body and the subtle body, sthula sharir and the sukshma sharir. So now form is something which is kuthasth, it's like very stuffy. So form is something which is not stretchable, it cannot be stretched. Rather, the content is stretchable, that can be stretched. So now form is something, if I take a point as a form, so that's not the point of the how we understand a point of geometry. It's not a geometrical point, rather it's a horizon. So point is actually related to form in that sense. That's a non-geometric point as form. So now that Vayu, Jal, Agni, Akash and Prithvi, these five elements are very much, that's how this reality is existing. And with this, our sense perceptions, and these are very much attached to when we sort of get engaged in the process of recreation. So form is something which is indivisible and content is something which is divisible. So I couldn't resist to sort of use this image. This is by Paul Klee. It's like when we draw a line, so a straight line, curved line, broken lines, there are different kinds of lines. So the moment we draw a line, we go beyond that space. So the line can curve the space and sort of carries it beyond its physicality, only the physical existence. So in this image is actually, it's very organic and it's very sort of squeezed into something. And at the same time, it's very flexible. So this, line is used here, and line is also used in different kinds of pots. There are also lines, but those are like the functional objects. There is a particular purpose. So there is a kind of an end use of that object. Whereas in this drawing, it's called actually the burdened children. So it's in the mind. It's not necessary that it should have an end use, or the purpose is actually to recreate that space. So now let's try to sort of connect with this idea of point as form, and also as a non-geometric point, as a horizon. So as a horizon, in a sense that it's very vast, and in that horizon, let us encapsulate this, the sort of contiguity in that. So that is how we get different structures. And in every formation, in every form, there are different structures, and each structure is unique. So in these diagrams, actually, let us try to understand that where, in which space we are seeing something is very, I mean, it's sort of bounded with lines. And in some spaces that with the lines, our eyes are also moving. It's not only the eyes, also the inner eyes are moving. Also the mind is moving. So in this, so let us imagine this movement in the process of recreation, where there are different directions and different dimensions. So there is always an enclosure and disclosure. So what is being enclosed in imagination is actually gets disclosed by design. So that is where action is very important. So in this image, this is also by clay, and as we see that in the, I mean, the movement in the space, that it's very structural, and in this design that we are constantly, at least in my understanding, that we are constantly moving in and out. So if one could imagine an architectural space, it's like our nose, that there is always a door or window. So door is like the threshold. It's like it has an inside and outside. And an architectural space also creates different memories. It carries a lot of memories inside. So that kind of a feeling, and that kind of an image actually was coming to my mind when I was actually preparing for this slides. So that is why I couldn't resist to sort of bring Paul Klee in this presentation. But in other images, actually, I tried to confine myself within this Indian periphery, and mostly people who are or were associated with this university or Shantiniketan as a place where design, always design has been playing a big role in different ways. So let me now start with this concept of action in Hannah Arendt's theory of action. So Arendt's actually divides or spread human condition in three different sectors. So one is the labor, another is work, and the third one is action. So labor is like how the human beings can survive. It's like our daily needs and all these things. And work is like to make the world suitable for living. It's appropriate for our sustenance. And action is to affirm the reality of the world. It discloses the identities of plurality and actualizes the capacity for freedom. So here, three things are very important, is the freedom, plurality, and disclosure. So freedom doesn't mean that there are many options, there are many things, and from there we are sort of understanding freedom. But freedom is something what she used in her thinking is like to begin something new. So there this understanding was very clear that every birth, like as we all individuals are living, we are born, that every birth is a new beginning. So every action is a new beginning. Every action is to do something new, something different. And every action has its own construal. So in that way, the idea or understanding of design can be related with our society, with our individual independent thinking, subjective, objective, in different ways. So it can be beautifully related with this understanding of plurality and the contiguity of reality, and how the freedom of action can disclose the plurality of beings. So, and that is how design can also give different shapes to this world, different meanings to the world. And in that way, the creator can recreate this reality. So when I'm saying recreation, doesn't mean that it's copying something or imitating something. Recreation in the sense that when the creator is imagining whatever is the imagination that is being recreated. It's not something that which was there earlier. It is something which is found there, which is in the imagination, that is being recreated. So in that way also, that every time the creator recreates the reality, that is new. And that is probably where I can put it in this way, that once a work of art is done, it is completed, and there the creator is nowhere. I mean, creator can always affirm his or her every action in that sort of expression. But it's once that work of art is being created, that is done, then the creator is not there. Because next time again, when the reality is being recreated, it is a new thing. So I thought of sort of beginning this idea of societal reflections, action and fabrication with some images of Kantha, because I thought that in here where I'm talking about this action as the starting point of design, this action is very much different from the action as praxis and action or the fabrication as poiesis. So that is where it is actually different, it is separated. So Kantha is something, these are the images from the undivided Bengal, where our very sentimental things and also very intimate things got stitched. So let us see this Kantha as a kind of a fabric of a society, where the homemakers sort of expressed very different stories, and the stories from Purans and what they used to see in their everyday life in a very simplified manner, but at the same time it's very complicated in terms of its expression. So and there are also like different stitches sort of reflect different kinds of imaginary horizon in each of them. For example, in this Kantha, it's written in the corner that don't forget me. Don't forget me in Bengali, Amai Jano Bhulo Na. It's by and the artist name is Rohima Khatun. So Kantha actually used to be made for a very auspicious either auspicious purpose or something for remembrance. And I mean, it always used to be in a very good reason. It used to be used as a gift during marriage, gift during a final departure or something like that. So it was something very intimate to the human society, intimate to the human beings. And let us see that how the simple things, I mean, the objects, what we see around, what we see in our everyday life, very simple motives, very simple objects, how beautifully they are stitched, and which sort of creates different layers in their imaginations. And these are some motifs actually they actually got preserved in some institutions, that mm, the different objects and how they were used in different ways by stitching differently. And at the same time, they're very expressional. So here, now I'm coming to Tagore's scribbling and how the lines were born from sort of, I would say, sound and his writings. And there was a beautiful overlapping between the two. And that created a kind of a pattern. Sometimes it's very fluid lines and different kinds of relations. So these are, and let us look at the different I mean the power of lines. These are some images from the Haripura posters, and how beautifully this polished flower was painted. So the left one is by Gauri Bhanj and the right one is by Jamuna Sen, along with his father Nandalal Bose. I mean, let us try to understand. That's why I tried to sort of give, I mean, bring different images where we see different kinds, different types, and different characteristics, different subject matters. And of course through lines and colors, I mean the space in between 2D and 3D, and sometimes 3D, and I mean more than the actually when we move on to different imaginary spaces, we go beyond dimensions. There are multiple dimensions. And here also it's very interesting where the gaps of the lines and the empty space are playing a beautiful sort of collaborations. It's like I was getting an image. I mean, when I was looking at this work and I was sort of getting an image of dancing. It's like when suppose we move our hand in an empty space, and the way we sort of enclose that empty space within the movement of our hands, and which can create a very musical space in mind. Mrinalini Mukherjee's textile fiber sculpture, I mean, where she used jute um, in different dimensions, it's very important in this world of fiber sculpture. I mean, let us try to understand that how this volume and space, they are playing beautifully, and where the empty space where sometimes the emptiness is actually disclosing the sort of the space which is full of content, and at the same time the space which is full of many things, full of stuff, that is sort of enclosing and disclosing that empty space. So I mean, both the things are happening actually simultaneously. And then I like these images. I mean, then I tried to bring some glimpse of how we practice design in Kala Bhavan. So it's just a glimpse of last 40 years how people are working in this area. So this is oven, this is a tapestry, and see in this space how this is very playful, and how beautifully all the lines are sort of interacting with each other and creating a third space. So here, this is also interesting that the dots, like if we can imagine in this way, it's not translating what I'm seeing, but rather like at the same, I mean, the time of seeing a work of art, how am I experiencing that? So if I'm part of this space, then how am I interacting with this, all the lines and dots and colors and everything? And overall, I am also being a part of the structure. So the idea is basically that the same lines on paper, lines on different other materials in case of sculpture, lines and space in woven fabrics, weaving, printing, drawing. So different material body. So we are actually trying to I mean, bring them from this space of imagination, and trying to give this a body. And in that way, how we are disclosing our mind and giving different meaning to the world, where all this memory, experience, and sort of imagination all are playing together. And this is happening something which is very constant, and we are actually beginning from a kind of a force which can also be seen as a very stuffy unit, which is, I mean, when we are saying that force, it's very forceful, that it has a motion. It allows a space for recreation. So apart from this, our five senses, we also have a sixth sense, what is known as antakaran, the inner ear, and also the inner vision. So the ear within and the eyes within. So in that way also, sound and image, they are very much integrated. And especially when we are talking about horizon, when we are talking about a fabric or a social fabric, or a kind of an imaginary fabric, or experiential fabric, whatever it is. So there, this sense of touch is very important. I mean, very important in a sense that the tactile quality, where imagination, I mean, without having the physical existence, the imagination can touch the body. So touching something without having the physical body. So that is how we actually unfold this layered world through different shadows, and identify each and every reflection in relation, and ultimately get this unity. So we start from an unity, and also we end up with this unity, and sort of recreate this world in a very different way, and in a very new manner. I mean, can recreate new habits, new way of seeing or observing or perceiving, whatever. So that is how we can unfold. And everywhere, again, I'm stressing on action, where design plays a role in the process of recreation. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Banatanwi, for that wonderful presented.
Sudipta, your
The
voice is
paintings.
breaking.
Am I audible now?
Now it is fine.
Okay. Thank you, Banatanwi, for this wonderfully articulated, and your internet connection is unstable. It's very difficult to have. Am I audible now?
Yeah. You're audible.
Thank you once again. My third attempt at thanking you, Banatanwi. Wonderfully articulated and extremely, documentary evidence that you have put forward is very, very interesting. We get to watch not only the historical legacy of Patho Bhavan, Shiksha Chhatro, Kala Bhavan, the school unit, as well as the Kala Bhavan unit, as well as looking at what's happening in the world of design, and how it's undergoing a lot of changes. So as we have not yet received any questions as such, so hopefully we will be getting one. So taking the prerogative of the discussant, I was just wondering as to how would these traditional designs, both in the sense of motifs and in the sense of the materials being used, how is it coping with the increased digitization of everything, particularly in a post-COVID world where we are looking at the unnecessary explosion of the digitized devices, digitized world, the idea, how design as such, both in the concept of creative design as in the finished product. What is the future of the inclusion or the exclusion of the digital world, digitized approaches, digitized people, because we are slowly becoming slaves to our devices, our machines, not only the younger generation but also the older people as they adopt and adapt to the world. What is the future of the kind of traditions that you were talking about, motives, ideas, material, technology, technique? How will this respond to this demand for internalization, integration of the digitized world and digitization?
Thank you, Sudipta. Actually, there again, I would bring these two things, that when we talk about technology, technology is actually misunderstood many times. That technology means to join. I mean, it's like everything has some possibilities and some disadvantages also, some advantages and disadvantages. So we have to know that how much we should use and in which way. So here actually mind plays, I mean, the possibility of imagination. If we can create a world of design for future, which would have much more higher sustenance, that it can sustain for longer period. So in that case is I would stress on this mental activities. I mean, how our mind are engaging with that. So with the help of technology, because of this technology, we are sitting together now. We are able to use this platform. So this is a very, this is a good advantage we are taking, or we are using technology in this way. So everything has good and bad effect. And in terms of keeping our traditions alive, we sort of need to recreate the space for this traditional practices, traditional thinking. I mean, of course, if we can cut the root of the tree from where we are born, and then nothing remains. So there has to be a good amalgamation, good correspondence between the two. So here actually our actions, I mean, we require different actions to act upon.
Thank you, Banatanwi. There are two questions, one from Bhavna Ghosh. Ma'am, we often say that once the creation of artwork is done, creator is nowhere. But is it really possible to deny the existence of the creator once the creation is done? As we know that the ideas, notions of the creator are always embedded in that particular piece of artwork. Thank you.
Okay, so the creator is nowhere once this work of art is done, if something is created. So when we are giving a body, sort of embodying our imagination, this is getting a body, right? So when we are getting a new body, when the creator is actually nowhere, in a sense that its presence is nowhere in this recreation. It's a new body, it's a new creation, it's a new imagination. So when this body is no more, then what remains? The idea remains, the content remains. So that can also be again recreated. So only the creators, I mean, whatever marks are there in that recreation, those can be alive, those can remain there, but not the creator.
Thank you, Dr. Das Mahapatra. The next questions come.
Shudev, may I say something?
Yes, please. Yes.
Banatanwi, it's been a wonderful talk. I particularly liked those, those that you exhibited, those kathas, the entire story used to be written in those kathas that were produced, and they were so much a part of our cultural heritage. It's just been, now this katha part has been revived, but the old, some of the kathas that I've seen, they are really very wonderful. Thank you, Banatanwi.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Vipashadi. Yes, that is also something that I'll come back to if we have time later, about the concept of the katha, the Nokshi katha, the tapestry, how we have internalized that. But let's go back to this question from Professor Debaruti Bandopadhyay. You mentioned praxis and poesis with reference to action and fabrication. Kindly elaborate, as I'm very interested in this idea.
Okay, so praxis is like in praxis and poesis, the action and the fabrication. So when we are doing, I mean, when we are working, and when we are working in the different dimension to this real world. So one thing is that when I'm saying that every action is a new beginning, and again here it is coming that in the last, if I go back to the previous question, that the creator is nowhere, that means that there is no place for this individual presence. Only, I mean, let us remove I from there. So if we can bring we there, then we means that we are bringing manyness together. So in the praxis and poesis, where action is different, is like action is actually getting related with this plurality of the world and plural beings. It's sort of unfolding plural beings and sort of relating that plurality with other different areas. It's not only so the basically it is removal of removal of I and bringing we together. It's not only one, not single. So the fabric can be one, and fabric can have the possibility of manyness. But again, this, when we are saying this fabrication, in that process, the process is again coming there. So there always a new thing is happening. So I'd like to know that whether it's my answer satisfies her. Is it all right?
Okay, I'll ask Debaroti Di if she could like to come on air.
Yeah.
Just 1 minute. Debaroti Di,
Right. Yes, thank you for the answer. I loved it actually. I wanted to know a little more about, you were talking about fabrication as poesis. I can understand the praxis part very clearly. Thank you for that. And regarding poesis, is it about a kind of intellectual rigor that we are talking? A kind of finding out the basic rules, etc. Is that the kind of poesis we are thinking of? Or is poesis something altogether different in the world of art and design?
Poesis is basically the formation. Like everything everything exists in this world has its own construal. So everything has its own constructions. So poesis is actually understood in that way.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Loved it. Thank you.
Members from Kalabhavan, I can see Shancha and I can see Shanjoyda. Would they like to come in? Then please, they could actually unmute themselves and ask the question directly. Shancha and Orpon or Shanjoyda, but they can of course always ask Banatanwi these questions at Kalabhavan. So taking once again the prerogative of the discussion, I would like to ask Banatanwi, taking the cue from Bipasha, the value of the Nokshi Katha, the Katha which becomes a document, a historic document, Kathas which tell stories, Kathas which have a long history of being preserved in households in parts of India, the Gangetic plains of India, parts of Bengal, Bangladesh, Jharkhand, Bihar, Uttar Pradesh. The Katha, the quilt, which is handed down from generation to generation, and each generation adds to that Katha or adds to the collection of Katha, and the embroidery, and it's the idea of female empowerment or women telling their story. This is something that's also there in African American stories, in Alice Walker's In Search of Her Mother's Garden, where these very, very mundane documents become a kind of a space in which women were sort of recording their histories, their lives. So is there a kind of a possibility of similar kinds of echoes in the kinds of designs that you showed, very, very visceral, particularly in Milanini Mukherjee's idea of using the rope, the coir, the kind of the grotesque, and the kind of the body which may decompose, but the art which does not. So is there a kind of a logic or a voice which is trying to come out, particularly voices from the margin, voices which have been, repressed, voices which have been suppressed, coming out through these designs. I was just wondering, layman that I am, so I was just
Sudipta, actually, when we are looking at Kantha, I mean, they are not actually the reflections of the Kantha traditions, what we see in Nalini Mukherjee's work, like where choir, etc., jute, choir, all these things have been used. But I mean, the intimacy of one's own being with the material which has been used. So if we look at Kantha very closely, then we'll see that in Kantha, it's a recycling of the materials, right? So when we are bringing out the threads from the fabric and again stitching it, so it's like how we constantly go back to our memory and recreate the memory, go back to our past and recreate the future. So in that way, that something when the women didn't have their voice in the society, it's like everything they used to express. So that was a kind of a very simple, I mean, the simplicity was there, and also it was very intimate. So I'm not saying that when people walk later on or in modern times, right, there is no intimacy, but the scenario of our society has been changed. Probably that was the time when women were not on the street as much as we see today. I mean, let us imagine a scenario where we are always confined in the inside the four walls, or in a particular society where we do not have many access. I mean, where we don't see different colors, different forms, different objects as much as we can see today. We can move out, we can have access, right? So there, I mean, the design of the society, of course, always plays an important role, where we live in, where we inhabit. So every space has its own ethos, and how as a creator we sort of relate with this ethos of the space we belong to. I think that is very important, because in terms of action or designing as the process, then the product, when we are moving into this space, so this is something that we also need to sort of enclose within ourselves. So at the same time, that is something, that action is disclosing one's own being, and the artist with the actions disclosing the space. So both are happening, both are corresponding in each other. So if we can look at from that perspective, then I think we'll understand better.
Thank you, Banatanwi. I was just also wondering if you could sort of try to sort of bridge this gap between, recreation on one hand and recycling on the other. Recycling of not only material, as you have so aptly put, material which doesn't go to waste, material, the hoarding of material, which talks about a kind of a very feminine, without going into the politics of the feminine idea of, not letting things go to waste, particularly from areas which have had a long history of suffering. So I was just wondering if recreation can also be referred to as a kind of a recycling of a material, recycling of history, recycling of memories. If there can also be a very, very, as you very well put it, that it's not really so much as art, which is very impersonal, which you can hang on a wall, but art which is something that you use on an everyday basis, art which you actually swaddle your little child, or katha which you can put over you during the winter. So I was just wondering the kind of intimacy that you were talking about, in what way can that be related?
Yeah, that can be related in a way that I personally, as a practitioner, I do not see this material space which is separated from the mental space. So the material space should come in the process of imagination. So whatever is being used to give a body, to give a shape to the thought process or any kind of a thinking, should have a sort of very spontaneous and intimate connection to the material where they are not actually separated. So even if we try to use the material and recycle in the process of recreation, so that should have a space of spontaneity where it can automatically get into the space of imagination and recreation. So there is no gap in between the mental space and the material space. And there is also another thing is possible, that when we are looking at material space, and from that material space we can sort of imagine something. It's like if I am given a lump of clay and I can imagine a pot out of that clay, or a lump of fibers and I can imagine different formations out of that fiber. But there has to be an intimacy between the two. There is no gap. And in that way, actually, we can gradually kind of come out from the space, I mean, the privilege of being a creator or an artist. So where it's not only I, it's like we, and I can carry we forward.
Right. Thank you.
Sudhir, may I add something?
Yes, please. Yes.
When Banatanwi is talking about this, this bondage here in Bengal, for instance, I know. Am I audible, Sudhir?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Bipasha, you are audible. Please go ahead.
Okay, so what they were saying is that there is in Bengal this kind of a belief that young, the newly born children, they often have some kind of rashes and skin, skin irritations, eruptions and all. And there is always a belief that you have to drape them in, they call them mashi pishi. And they say that you have to drape the children in the old saris of the aunts, so that only the child will be cured. And katha is a bit of that. You take clothes, old saris, and you actually use them to make the layers of the katha. And they are handed down from generation to generation. And there also you find that when the upper part of the wrap, it gives away, again a new piece is sewn into it. So it is really a retelling of stories, a lot of love, and of course recycling, as you said very correctly, that was also there. But this was very much a part of recreation, yes, but a kind of a very closely knit things, because old clothes you only ask for from people who are very close to you. So that's a very much a kind of heritage. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bipasha. The one last question, because there are no more questions in the chat box. This is a speculative question. Like, could you tell us about some really very interesting work done by your students in the last couple of years with reference to their response and reaction to the lockdown, to the COVID? Anything that suddenly comes to mind as something which is new, something is unique, and in what way did that sort of leave a kind of a mark on their design? Anything that you would like to share with us?
Actually, I saw one of my students' work recently that his work used to be very well contained, and there used to be a kind of a calmness, and it's like used to be very peaceful or something like that. But suddenly I noticed, because he was disturbed and he was unable to work at home and came back here, then all these hostel issues, etc. came up, and he was sort of unsettled. So this unsettlement of his mind, I mean, absolutely got reflected in his work. Though he is working very good, very nice, but the characteristics of his work got changed very much. I mean, when I look at his work, immediately I can see his mind, what is going on. And he also works with the idea of mass and his own existence. So he is constantly searching for that, where is his existence in this mass, that whether it is visible or not, whether he is visible or not. So he is questioning his own being. So now the question is same, but his expressions have been different. So that is also, I would say that it's a positive thing, because there is a spontaneity in his expression. So whatever situation he is going through, that it's directly expressed. So it's in that way, it's not a representation, it's a direct expression. And design also should be like, not only in design, I mean, of course this is in the process. A creative person should live in this world, because he or she understands in a different way, or looks at this world in a different way, that living with the things as it is. And it's like, not as a designer, how I sort of keep my studios, or keep my classrooms, or keep my household stuff, etc. So I am actually living with each and every objects wherever I am, whether it is in the marketplace, but there are different kinds of relations, multiple relations. But in that multiple relations, I have some relations, some spaces which are very intimate to me, which are very close to me. So when I am sort of dealing with some fibers or fabrics, or some clay or stone or whatever, so then I am also living with those materials. So I can sort of see or realize or understand or experience my own being in those materials. So in that way, design can be seen everywhere. So also it can break this mundane idea of design as a decoration or ornamentation. It's more than that. It's much more than that. So it's always wise to understand design as a whole, where it affirms its own, I mean, anything's own being, whatever exists. So that is one positive thing. But also I mean, I saw in his work that how it made a difference in his expression. That this spontaneity is very important.
Thank you, Banatanwi. If there are no more questions, then that brings me to the word of thanks. First of all, big thank you goes out to the Vice Chancellor, without whose initiative this Dialogic Visva-Bharati Young Scholars Lecture Series would not have happened in the first place. We began way back in 2021 in January, so we have spent 13 months. And second of all, our thanks goes out to Dr. Banatanwi Das Mahapatra, our speaker, for agreeing to deliver this lecture and showing us not only work that are historical, that are legendary, but also how those time old and time tested are also part of the modernity of today and tomorrow. Our thank you goes out to the officials of the library, uh, of the library and the computer center, Dr. Ajay Kumar Sharma, for introducing the speaker, Dr. Kaushik Kumar Ghosh from the library for part of the committee and hosting this session. Once again, our grateful thank you goes out to Dr. Orpan Mukherjee, our in-house artist, for designing a flyer. Once again, keeping up to the great standard that he has set for himself. Our gratitude goes out to all the members of the Dialogic Committee headed by Professor Bipasha Raha. We will again tune into the next edition sometime in the third week of March. And we will also have the next second edition after that sometime in March. So March will see us putting forward 2 more dialogic lectures. So we will use the same platforms for dissemination of the information, the emails that have been sent by Dr. Kaushik Ghosh, the flyer on the Visva-Bharati website. So thank you, our listeners. Thank you once again for being part of Dialogic. And that brings us to the close of this edition. Looking forward for you to joining us next. Thank you, Kaushik. Thank you, Banatanwi.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Shudev also.
Thank you. So, Kaushik, if we could sort of bring this